In this video, we're taking a look at our last shimmering gray ink by Diamine Shimmering Shadows. As always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the gray ink playlist, so if you wanted to see more, you can find that there. I'm an ink guy. Let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. Yay, we're showing up on camera with no feather, no spread. We get shading in the stub, in the medium, and in the extra fine. This probably would be a great gray ink without its shimmer added to it. Now, in general, they're all coming through as the same tone. The extra fine took 7 seconds to dry, and the medium took 11. Scrubby of the extra fine is showing, the medium showing much more color variation than the extra fine. That has more to do with the shimmer that's in there and how it's affecting the camera. The smear test says you probably could recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a TWSBI Eco with a broad nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, no ghosting. No feather, no spread. Some light shading does show up in the stub, in the extra fine, and even in the medium. But a lot of that shading gets sort of hidden through this sparkle. Again, we have largely the same tone through all of the writing. The extra fine took 11 seconds to dry and the medium 18. The scrubby for both do give color variation. It's not showing as well on camera as it is to me. It's the angle, but it's definitely there in the writing, and the smear test you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down and it's put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see the gold shimmer form the line at the bottom. Now the gray that's moving up is moving up fairly uniformly until it starts to gather at the top much darker. The one on the right that's allowed to dry for 10 minutes, the interesting thing here is how much gray is staying around that gold shimmer. The rest moves up, but not nearly as far. And a little more obvious here is this aspect that comes in at the top that I can only describe as something similar to what's frequently seen in blue-black inks. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, no spread, nice shading throughout all of it. We get some shade spots that occur in the stub, a few more that show up in the extra fine. It shows itself very well in the medium. All of them are coming across very much as the same tone, unaffected by the pen. The extra fine took 8 seconds to dry and the medium 14. Scrubby for both do give us color variation, just not for you on camera. We get it in the writing, and the smear test you might, maybe, be able to recover if you smear while you're writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink could be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles itself well enough that I'd say you could use it in a note-taking situation if you wanted to go back and highlight. Now, water is lifting all the darkest parts, but that gray that stayed around by the line on the chromatography is still there in the water. And on pen flush, that gray still there. This is really holding up on paper. However, it didn't hold up in the pen. It only took water to clean it out of the pen. The 1/3 bleach solution is completely removing it, but you're not going to need it to clean this from your pen. The next writing sample is done on G-Lalo paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. Now I was interested in this because of the gray tone. I was curious how well it would stand its ground against being gray on gray. And you know what? It did very well. We have no feathering, no spreading. The shading still shows up very well in the stub, extra fine, and medium. We're largely looking at the same tone for all of them. It's still performing very solid. 6 seconds to dry for the extra fine, 9 for the medium. Scrubby for both give color variation because there's definitely shading in the writing. And the smear test you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine's Sparkling Shadows has a viscosity of 1.56, so this is a wet ink. The next writing sample is done on white lines paper. Really good performance on this with no bleeding and no ghosting. This paper's not made for fountain pen ink and has a number of times performed very well that I'm impressed with. We have no feather, no spread. We do get shading in the stub. We definitely get it in the extra fine, stands out much more. In the medium, it's there, but it's much harder to see because a lot of the medium just seems to be a bit darker than everything else we're getting. Now, the extra fine and medium, or the extra fine and stub look about the same tone. It's the medium that mostly writes in its darker tones. Extra fine took 4 seconds to dry, medium 6. Scrubby for both do give color variation, but it's not really there in the medium. And a smear test you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Diamine's Sparkling Shadows has an average dry time of 12 seconds, so it's a little bit faster drying than normal. The last writing sample is done on Franklin Christoph paper. No bleed, no ghost. I do like putting some of these shimmering inks on more absorbent papers like this. No feather, no spread, nice shading in the stub, nice shading in the extra fine, decent shading, not as nice in the medium, but it's definitely there. The extra fine and the stub are the same tone. They look a little, the stub looks a little darker when I'm looking at it on the camera, but in person, same tone, a lot of messages coming through today. The medium is darker than everything else on the page. Extra fine took 5 seconds to dry, while the medium took 8. Scrubby for both shows some color variation. Doesn't really show well in the medium, and the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine's Shimmering Shadow, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a nice turquoise ink because I thought it matched the gold and the gray. I went with Robert Oster's Aqua. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of this shimmering ink, the last shimmering ink that I will likely review? Diamine's Shimmering Shadow. As it dries, you get to see the gold come to life over this very dark gray. It's really cool to watch. Almost like the ink is changing colors. Magical. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? As has been the case with shimmering inks, I'm going to recommend a very wet, broad pen. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at KWZ's Rotten Green.